Welcome back to Learning the Tarot. Today we are talking about the Page of Swords. So this card is all about journeys. So if it's upright, it's a good journey. Like you're prepared, you're nervous about it, but like you got your tools that you need kind of a thing. And if it's reversed, you're going headstrong, but probably gonna make some mistakes. And I love when they both kind of have the same trajectory of a meaning, but it's like the journey of it is so different. For the upright position of this card, this journey is like the way they had described it and like my brain immediately leached onto was the idea of starting a career. And I'm like, yeah, that works great. Because the example and like kind of very metaphorical is like you've gone to like your boot camp training and your sword has never actually seen battle, and then now you're like ready to go off and fight in the war kind of a thing. Like you got your sword ready, but you're like nervous about it and you're like, do I actually know what I'm doing? And honestly, starting into a career can feel like that. And it can be this thing of like, am I really ready? Am I really there? Can I do this? And like you're too in your head and like being like almost too vigilant over like every little detail that needs to be done. And it's not necessarily saying that this is like your leap of faith card. It's more like you got this, you can walk into the situation. It's not like a jump and fall situation and you're like, I got this. We're just gonna blindly hope that there's a cushion at the end of this fall. It's more like you're gonna walk down the stairs. You know how to do that now, kind of a thing. And so really when you're starting a career, like there's other examples, but of course, that's the one I leached onto. That's exactly how it feels, because there is a point where you have gathered all of your skills that you need, and then you just actually have to do it. And you can keep feeling like, oh, well, I'm not ready. It's not good enough. I'm not ready to continue yet. Like, I'm not there yet. And then at some point, this card would pop up and be like, you're good. You've trained enough. Go. Actually do it. And that would be your hesitant little baby steps into your career. And honestly, I feel like for me, that's been like this past year. Because like I was looking at this card and like looking at the two meanings of it, it was totally two different parts of my life. And the past year, like even a little bit over a year at this point, but definitely like there on one day in particular, I had a moment of like, well, I can either keep doing what I've been doing, which is in a lot of ways the preparation stage. In the card's meaning, this would be like the training stage, where you're trying to get as much done in the background without actually doing the thing yet. And so for my real life, that was gathering all of these random skills and knowledge and different things, and was waiting for the opportune moment. And the opportune moment doesn't always appear the way you want it to. And so with the swords, it just feels like this card was like that moment where I sat down and I actively like used logic, and we went down, I looked over all of our bills, how much it's gonna cost, and then I made the active decision with my husband and our household of like, hey, can I actually try the career thing like full time? And it was that leap. It's not a leap of faith, because like the leap of faith felt more like when I was like in college and like going to school for it. Whereas this was like the brave walking into like, I got this, like I'm good. You might still be trying to convince yourself as you go. And like, that's how it felt, because I had gathered all of the things I probably needed. Editing software, I learned that in this journey over the past like 6 years. Well, probably more, honestly, probably the last 10 years, 9 to 10 years, if I'm being honest. But like, learning editing software that you actually have to pay for, and it's expensive, but it's worth it. Because like Movie Maker decided to discontinue, so you had to find something else. And then also learning like how to find like royalty-free things, like the stock photos that people will use in videos and things, how to find that, how to use that. And like also just like the dedication and like the actually sticking to a schedule and treating it like a job, and actually getting things done and knowing how to create a work-life balance and like setting specific standards for yourself and being like, no, like I'm not gonna do that, but I will do this. I'm not gonna do that, but I can do this. And like you're being lazy, you need to actually continue to do stuff. Like, there is so much that I've learned over the past, again, like 9 or 10 years that I have slowly accumulated to where last year it was like, you know what? I can actually implement this. I can actually do it. I can take that step and actually really feel like I began my career. Like, that's the day that I count as day one, where I had done things before then, but it was very much more casual hobby and, like, again, in the training stages. And this was my walking into, no, this is my career. And that mindset where it's like having deadlines and like being on schedule and figuring out how to do things, and like, it's still a rough journey, don't get me wrong, but like, it's a little different than like a leap of faith, like, I'm going to be a writer, I'll figure it out as I go. This was more like, I have the degree, I know how to do the stuff, like, I got this. And so it's just a little bit different. So when it's reversed, this is when you're a little bit like overly confident for your journey. And instead of the journey being like a career beginnings, it's more so the journey of like teenager. And honestly, it felt like from moving from teenage life into adult life, that really awkward phase that most people go through, where you're like, I'm an adult, I don't know what I'm doing, constantly, because like, that's what it feels like. That weird limbo where you're not really a kid, but you're not really an adult, and like, your brain's still developing, but now you have some more freedom, and like, you're kind of in charge of yourself, and you think you know what you're doing, but it's usually a time of frivolousness and irresponsibility, and it's like, you need to calm down, you need to think things through, and you're not. Whereas the upright of this card's like, you're overthinking it. This is underthinking it and putting way more confidence than you need. And honestly, like, when I look at that, I think about me in like 2014, and like 2014, like 2015, when I was in college. Like, it was definitely the era of like, I got this, like that exact attitude. And so it's so weird to see like these two journeys of like kind of still the same thing, because if I look at it really at that same facet of life, at 2014 I had published my first book, my channels were doing decent, and definitely into 2015 they were both doing pretty well. And then, I mean, they are doing better now in a lot of ways, but in some ways still no. It's a journey with online creation, and you're trying to just be like, please watch my content. I know you have literally billions of options, but mine's good too. Like, you're in constant competition with other people to be like, but I should be the one you spend the next, whatever, like 5 to 10 minutes of your life watching post to somebody else, you know? Like, you have a thing with that. But back then, it was like, I got this. Look at what I'm doing. It's so great. And like, I did not have the discipline. And I constantly find myself telling this story, but truly, like, how this card represents itself is like, it's so true. Because when it's reversed, again, I think back to that point in my life where I didn't have the discipline and I thought I knew everything. And yet I was frivolous and irresponsible on all fronts. I mean, over the past few years, like, frivolous spending that nowadays I'd be like, what are you doing? Ugh. Versus now I'm very conscious of our money, like I have to be. But before I would just not care and like just being irresponsible with like my time and just frivolously spending my time. Like, I used to watch way more videos and Netflix and just hanging out and just scrolling on my phone. Whereas now I work most of the time, and I do consider it work because it just takes time. Like, reading a book a day, that's a lot of time out of your day every single day. And writing 2 chapters of a book a day, where 2014, 2015 me was intimidated at a chapter a week. And now I do, like, for this current book, for the death book I'm working on, these chapters are so draining, I only plan 2 a day. Because it's like, oh my god. But like, even then, that's 2 chapters a day. 2014, 2015 me, it was 1 chapter in a week. And that felt overwhelming. And 1 book a week felt overwhelming. And even like 1 to 2 uploads a week for like the witchy content felt overwhelming. And now I'm like, dude, like, I post 5 days a week on the author channel, at least 2 days a week on Patreon, every single day on the Witchy channel. Like, I'd be posting on my cooking channel, but I have to wait a couple more months till we have extra funding to be buying random ingredients for like cooking. Because right now our grocery budget is about $50 per person for 2 weeks. So like, that's not a lot of money to buy a lot of food. So like, you gotta be way more calculated in how you're spending that money. And so like, once we have a little bit more and we'll finally have a few more things paid off this summer, like then I can start to revive that channel. So that'll be a couple uploads a week as well. And again, like I look back and I'm like, wow, I was doing like the bare minimum. And now I just look at it as a job and I like force myself to, even if I don't take a full day off, I relax a bit on how much to accomplish in a day. And that if I have some days where I don't get any work done, like it happens, I try not to do that. But like on the weekends, like I try to actually have a weekend so that like I only have like one project for the weekend. And that's mostly like reading a fiction book, because that's pretty easy to do around like yard work, housework, vacationing things, whatever. And then during the week, I try to like get all my content and things ahead of time and worked on and whatever. And like, that's where that difference is. Because when I was in the reverse of this card, it was more like, oh, well, I'll get to it. And like, if I wrote for like 1 to 2 hours, that was so much work. And then I just want to go hang out, lay out in the sun, stay in like a pool and just hang out. And now I'm like, okay, so I get up at like 4 in the morning. All right, get these done before sunrise. And then I got to do these things before this time, these things before this time. Then I'm going to do this during this time. And then my day ends at the time everybody's off work. So like I work a lot. Whereas before it was just frivolously being like, well, I'll get to it. And like, it's fine. Like, it's so hard to read a book in a like week. And now it's a day. Like, it's just the attitude shift and like the realization of like the mindset where when it's the reversed, it's like this cocky attitude that like you can do it, but you don't have any of the skills or knowledge to actually make it happen. And you're just all in your head of like, I can do this. But in reality, you can't. And then when it's upright, you have all the tools, but you're nervous about it. And you're like, I don't know. And you're trying to be so vigilant for everything that you need to worry about. And then sometimes you just need to actually start that journey and actually start walking into your future. And so anyways, those are my thoughts for this card. And like I said, this series is not necessarily for like learning the tarot in like a traditional sense. Like this is just me learning them and like trying to find my ways of remembering and like interacting with them and like figuring out how these cards mean. Like if I pulled them from any deck, what would it kind of mean to me? And just trying to find ways where I can connect to that card and what it would represent. And some of them are easier than others. But yeah, so anyways, that is my interpretation and thoughts for learning about the Page of Swords. I would love to hear your interpretation for this one in the comments down below. Huge thank you to my patrons. I'll have their names here on the screen. If you'd like to support me and get access to exclusive content, it is patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Make sure to like and subscribe. I post every single day. And until next time, thank you so much for watching, and bless be.